Hey there, Nightfarers. I'm one of the lucky folks who received an access code to the upcoming network test for Elden Ring Nightreign, which is set to take place over the weekend. So let's take some time to talk about 4 things I'll be looking for in the network test and how I'll be covering it here on the channel. The first thing I'll be looking for in the network test is lore. Any scraps of it we can get. I'm a lore-first player when it comes to From Software games. I learned to love the combat, but it was the promise of uncovering ancient secrets and environmental storytelling that brought me to places like Lordran, Lothric, and the lands between. Despite many initial theories to the contrary, it looks like Nightreign will be relatively light on lore. It takes place in an alternate timeline. You've got bosses from other games flying around, and the developers have gone out of their way to say that they don't want the game to spoil any of the core mysteries of Elden Ring. However, it has been confirmed that Nightreign takes place in a version of the Lands Between where the Shattering still happened, and from there, things diverged, meaning that we could learn a bit more about the infamous war between the demigods that preceded the main game. Perhaps there are minor characters or long-forgotten demigods that Nightreign will give voice to through its story, item descriptions, and boss battles. Speaking of bosses, if any big names from Elden Ring return for this one, there's always the possibility that the way they're portrayed could affect our interpretation of them. In one of his videos, Ratatasker brought this up with regards to Radahn. What if he appears as a boss and finally, at long last, says actual words? Not just but real sentences with phrases and syllables. Whatever he says could have an impact on how we interpret his vow with Miquella. The same is true for Godwin. If he shows up at all, it would be pretty earth-shattering. So while I don't expect a feast on lore in Nightreign, I think a few snacks are likely, and that's the type of thing I'll be keeping an eye on in the network test. Next up, for the second thing I'll be looking for, let's move away from returning bosses from Elden Ring and talk about returning bosses from other From Software games. We've already seen the Nameless King and the Duke's Dear Freya, but who else will be wandering their way into this one? I'm sure that From Software is going to want to keep some rounds in the chamber for the full release, but at the same time, they're going to want to get people talking about the network test, so I'd be willing to bet we'll see at least 2 or 3 big-time classic names showing up in Limfeld. Characters that, I think, would get the internet popping would be someone like Artorias, who I'd love to see take the field with both arms for a change, or Lorien and Lothric, my favorite boss combo from Dark Souls 3. I'm sure everyone will be asking about tag team champions Ornstein and Smo, and I'd be kind of surprised if they didn't pop up at all, but I'll bet that's a duo they're saving for the full release. Maybe we'll even see the Bed of Chaos again. Everyone loved that one the first time around. Let's continue the conversation about characters and bosses from other games with the third item on my list, Bloodborne content. It's clear that Dark Souls content will be in the game, we've already seen it, but will there be true Bloodborne content, or will it be more of a faux-born sort of thing? Look at this player character, for example. She's clearly inspired by Lady Maria, and twirls her blade in a manner anyone familiar with the Old Hunters DLC would be familiar with. But will there be overt references to Bloodborne in her story, or in the descriptions of the items she carries? If not, I'd call her more of a faux-born character, someone meant to reference the long night we spent in Yharnam in obvious ways, but without triggering any of the IP issues From Software might run into if they tried to use actual Bloodborne content. Remember, as unfortunate as it is, Sony owns the IP and would have to approve the use of any of its assets. If true Bloodborne content does show up, like say a Winter Lantern or a Cleric Beast, not only would it be awesome, but it would also be a sign that Sony and From Software have improved their working relationship, and thus, fresh rumors, with some real substantiation, would abound that a remaster, remake, or sequel is on the way. As a guy who readily cites Bloodborne as his favorite Soulsborne game, there's nothing I love more, and for that reason, I'm going to be keeping a close eye out for any true Bloodborne content in Nightreign. But I'm not going to get my hopes up, so unfortunately, the most I'm expecting is some faux-born stuff. Finally, the fourth thing I'll be looking for in Nightreign is how the personal storylines for the player characters are going to work. According to reports, each of the set player characters has one, which is something of a first for From Software. This sounds really exciting, and I could see them approaching each of these player characters in a similar way to how they approach NPCs in their other games, with esoteric directions to follow and hidden side quests to seek out in-game. I doubt they'll give away much in the network test, but I'm sure we'll get some small hints at the direction their stories will be taking and how their individual narratives will be taking shape during our time in Limfeld. So those are the things I'll be looking for in the network test for Elden Ring Nightreign. Now let's talk about how I'll be covering it here on the channel. I'm not a big livestream guy. I enjoy hosting them as special occasions, but they're not my favorite way to create content, and I'm never my best at 6 AM, when several of these network tests will be kicking off. So my plan is to record footage for each day, and at the end of that day, put out an after-action report detailing everything I saw and experienced, reporting back on any developments with regards to those 4 key things I mentioned, as well as things I liked, didn't like, and what I look forward to checking out on my next trip to Limfeld. So you can expect 3 after-action reports from me. One on the morning of Saturday, February 15th, another on the morning of Sunday, February 16th, and a final one on the morning of Monday, February 17th, to close out a weekend's worth of content. But while we wait to step into Limfeld for the first time, what are your expectations for Nightreign? And what will you be looking for in the network test? Be sure to let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Big thanks to my Elden Ring collaborators yepeLaugh and Moonlapse Piano, who contributed their awesome piano covers for this video. To check out both of these talented creators, just follow the links down below in the description box. Big shout out to all my Silver and Gold tier YouTube channel members and Patreon subscribers, including James Pruitt, Gustavo Balabi, Lil Caesar, Reed, Pathonian, Faith G, Anna Novikova, Laura Parenti, and Sean Bobby, who get early access to these videos thanks to donations of $5 to $10 a month. See you guys next time, and go birds!